Welcome to MotivationAddict.com with Julie Salon. This is where you will find inspiring stories on how to motivate yourself and gain momentum towards success, turning fear into confidence, and how to find divine flow, allowing you to crush your goals. Thank you for being here. And now, let's tune in to today's show.
Hey everyone, Julie Salon from Motivation Addict. I am thrilled that you are here today. I have a very special guest for you, and I know I say that quite a bit, but this one is really, really crazy special, out of the park special. Her name is Michellie Jones, and she is an Australian triathlete. She's winner of 2 ITU Triathlon World Championships and an Olympic silver medal in Sydney 2000. And she has quite the career. She's been 3 times did she compete in the ITU World Championship races. Her debut race was in 1990, and she has won. She's been a most consistent athlete ever. She's won a tally that's reported to be over 175 wins across Olympic, off-road, and long-distance events. And she became the first Australian woman to win a World Ironman Championship, and it made her only the 2nd Australian in history to win the event, behind 1994 men's world champion Greg Welch. On top of that, this is the unbelievable part. She's an equestrian, avid equestrian. Of course, she sets her goals super, super high. She's training in dressage for the Prix St, which is the highest level in dressage. And she's very driven, and she has her own, she's got clients now. She still competes, but she's got her own clients. And what was really cool about this talk was that she actually helped another woman who was legally blind and can't hear through one of the Ironmans. So it's really, really special. I think you're going to love this one. So go and enjoy it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and rate it. And again, I give you Michellie Jones. Hope you love it. Have a great one. Hey everyone, it's Julie Salon from Motivation Addict. I am thrilled today, I have Michellie Jones on the phone with me today. She's got such a long resume. I'm going to let her tell you what she's done, because although the formal introduction, which I just did, she's done everything under the sun, from Ironmans to triathletes. And welcome to the show, Michellie. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It's going to be an awesome conversation.
I can't wait for you to talk, about your background, because I know you've done so many cool things. Can you maybe start the listeners off with a little bit of background on what you've done, maybe in a snapshot, because it's so much.
I know, that's funny. Let's see. I grew up in a small town in Australia, and my high school run coach suggested I do triathlon, and I sort of was more of a horse rider than anything else growing up. And then for some reason, my high school run coach saw something in me and suggested I do a triathlon, which I had no idea what that was. But I definitely could swim. I wasn't a great swimmer, but living on a farm and having water around, my mother was like really, really conscious on making sure that everyone in the family could swim. So that was always nice to know that I was, a competent swimmer. And as far as that, it was just trying to work on the level. And then, I started doing triathlon, and I sort of paid my way through college by doing triathlons, just local triathlons, making money. My college friends were all jealous because, they'd have to work in bars and do all this other stuff. And I'd just go and race for a weekend and make a couple of $100, and I'd be like, okay, cool. And then, I decided I want to race against the best people in the world. And so I came to the US, and it sort of blossomed from there. In my second world championship, I ended up getting 3rd. And then my 3rd world championship, I won. And then the next one I won.
It's amazing.
And then triathlon got into the Olympics. And the most awesome thing about that, in 2000, the Olympics was in Sydney, basically my hometown. So many of my friends and family got to see me win a silver medal, the first medal for the Australian team, because we were the first medal event on the program. And being the first time triathlon was ever in the Olympics, it's a pretty cool experience. And then when I didn't make the Athens Olympic team 4 years later, I got talked into doing the Ironman, and my first Ironman I won, even though I puked at the finish.
Oh, wow.
I then signed up to the Ironman World Championship in Kona, and I was second. And then the year after that, I won. But I think one of the most fun things that I've done in my career was guiding. So I guided a sight-impaired triathlete. Yes, they've got to swim, bike, and run. And as a guide, you swim with them, bike with them, and run with them. And we ended up winning a Paralympic gold in Rio.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
every time I look back and, that's just me as an individual, basically. And then I look at some of the stuff that I've done in terms of coaching. I mean, I've been very, very blessed what my sport has given me.
That is an amazing, amazing background. And for somebody who has always...
And that's only like you said to get the short
snapshot. That's a snapshot, everybody. He's done it all. And the cool part is that it seems like you can, just hearing you go through that, you can hear and see the progression that you've made. But the really funny part to me is that you're so humble, because it's like, yep, and I won here. Yeah, and I won here. It's quite a thing to win, because obviously these are the best athletes in the world at the top, the tippy top of the whole world. So it's really
cool.
Oh
yeah, I mean, it wasn't always easy, but I must admit, when I look at other sports and what I've done, and even the people around with me, I'm like, whoa, because when people. And that's when you, as an athlete, you sort of really think about it. When somebody else brings it up, you're like, yeah, I did do that. And nobody did that. And then, yeah, I did that. And, particularly when you're sort of creating history, because triathlon was so young, it's like there's so many first things that I got to achieve because, we were making history. And, triathlon is still making history. But, because I was one of the first bunch of us who started doing triathlon and then doing it professionally, and then, going through the process and getting to the Olympics, and then, our sport then got into the Paralympics, and being able to be part of the first Olympic program and then the first Paralympic program for triathlon. I mean, who can say they've ever done that sort of stuff? So I just feel I've been given these opportunities, and I mean, it's not like I've asked for it. It's like these opportunities just come up.
Yeah.
That's where it's like, I've always, and I still race today. I mean, it's not like that I've given up triathlon. A lot of professional athletes, do give up because it is hard, because how do you find the motivation every year?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
And a lot of the times, I'm doing the same races like over and over again. And I think my twin sister, Gabby, sort of put it in a good perspective, was like, but Michellie, you're unmotivated if somebody's motivated. So I thought that was a good perspective. But I mean, it's challenging because, how many times can you race the same race over and over again?
Right.
And, that's the challenge that I face. And it's like, it's not like people are getting slower.
Yes.
It's competitive. It's just because what I've done doesn't make every time I sign up for a race doesn't mean that I'm going to win. It's like there's so many people out there who are just as competitive, or, have the same passion, and, maybe they're training a little bit more than you. So for me, it's like a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of feel that it's a part of who I am. And I've been lucky enough that I sort of kept changing the goals that I had to achieve. So when I went from professional to basically an age group athlete, I wasn't afraid. For one, I think a lot of people are afraid of trying to maintain the athlete that you were on a pro level to when you basically committed like everyone else. There's not a paycheck at the end of the finish line. It's just you getting out there because, I think it's always been like that for me, that it wasn't that, I could make a living from this sport. It was that I enjoyed doing the sport. And I think that's a reflection of why I've had such longevity.
Yeah, because you're so passionate about it, obviously, and it comes through your voice. And I'm sure it's obviously a lifestyle because it's something you have to be completely committed to on a daily basis.
No, exactly. And that's not to say that I don't wake up every day and go, oh my goodness, it would be so nice to sleep in. And, some days I do. And, it's like, and then there's some days where it's like, you know what, how many times do I have to go and put 100% effort in? So you learn to manage your efforts. And I think that's important as well. It's like, I try to teach my athletes that I coach. It's like, some sessions need to be easy and some sessions need to be harder, and definitely where you are in the season should determine how much that hard effort is, because one of the things that I always tell my athletes, you don't want to keep putting your hand in the fire too many times. You want to save that for racing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a difference, between a professional athlete and an age group athlete. A lot of the times it's like professional athletes know when to go easy. And I find that amateur age group athletes tend to have one pace. They don't have a dramatic difference between their slow pace to their fast pace.
How do you manage their expectations? Because I'm going to give you two scenarios, and you're such a great coach. So let's just pretend that I'll give you one scenario, the hard one, which is probably not hard for you because you've probably experienced it. Let's just pretend that I came to you and I'm a novice. I'm completely green, obviously an amateur. And I said, I'd like to try an Ironman. I've never done this before. But I really want to be in, the top 3 in the over 50 group, even though I've never done it before. I'm sure you can help coach me. But I only have about, I only can work out maybe 3 times a week. So can we make that work? What would you say to somebody like that? I guess I'm asking you the long way around, Kaylee. How do you manage their expectations and make them realistic?
Oh, no, and that's a big thing. It's like, and I'm a realist, and, the way I coach, it's like I'm going to be upfront and honest. It's like, you're paying me to get to wherever you need to get to, but it's like, you've also got to let them know there's a commitment that's required and there's an ability level that's required. So you have to be realistic in the goal setting. So for me, I try to take it down a notch. Well, let's first see if you can swim this pace for blah, blah, blah. Or, let's see if you can get your power numbers, around here. Let's see if you can get your run pace. So I try to break it down, because then they can start to see the bigger picture. Because, I get a lot of athletes that come to me and say the same thing. And I'm like, look, let's see where you're at. Then we can start making realistic goals. And that's the key word, right? Realistic goals.
Yes.
And, I don't want you to fail at something that, maybe it's not for you. So let's figure out, what that true potential goal is. And, it is a hard conversation to have sometimes, because, if they haven't experienced, triathlon, or they haven't experienced Ironman racing, they may not realize how competitive it actually is.
Yes. And I mean, this is a lifestyle for the folks that are in the race. So this is just for the listeners. And I know everyone's heard of these, the triathlons and the Ironman. We've all heard of them. We've seen some of them on TV. I always like to watch, and it's just grueling to watch, let alone get through it. But from your perspective, so this is a lifestyle. If you have someone who comes to you and they don't have the realistic expectation of making this a lifestyle, you just need to have that conversation of just, if you want to be here, as you said, this is what you need to put into it. And of course, then we have to manage your ability. That's, I guess, the second part of it. How do you manage their abilities if their abilities are really not there? How do you do that?
That's where that realistic goal setting comes in. And, there are nice ways that you can, let them know, like comparing. I mean, in this day and age, you can compare so much data.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's pretty much like, hey, if you're doing this and this is what you need to do, and it's like you're so far apart, okay, well, let's manage that and rethink what your goals are to be realistic. Because still, finishing an Ironman is still an awesome accomplishment. And I don't care if you're a professional athlete or an amateur athlete, it's like where you finish on the podium is secondary if you don't get across the finish line.
Yes.
Because that should be always your number one goal. And then, everything after that is like a bonus. Because I don't know if you realize this, but the highest DNF rate is actually in the professionals, right? Because they're like pushing themselves so hard to go as fast as they can, the percentages go up because they're on the extreme. And then, when you're an age group athlete, you've got to, manage your time with your family, your friends, your work, all those sort of things. So if you've only got a couple of hours to spend, realistically, unless you have a lot of talent and have a background in endurance, it's like you have to explain to them, look, this is the reality of it. But, if they're willing to work hard and put the effort there, definitely they can improve and actually reach the realistic goals that you've set out for them. But, Ironman takes a huge commitment. And triathlon isn't just about Ironman, and that's sort of what I like about it. It's like there's options. There's like sprint distance races. There's like Olympic distance races. There's half Ironman races. There's Ironman races. And then there's even races that are a little bit shorter than that.
Mm-hmm.
So the way you manage your expectations is like you've got to start somewhere. And then they will get to see, the data will drive reality in a lot of ways.
Yes. How do you manage for yourself your load, your schedule, meaning that you have, you've got so much on your plate between your clients and your training and family life, and how do you manage all that in the span of a small 24 hours a day, and you have to sleep as well?
Well, the nice thing is, like, really, when I look at my bucket list in terms of triathlon, there's really not much that I could like add to it.
Right.
So it's sort of bonus. And I even sort of felt that when I went into the Olympics in 2000. I was already like 2-time world champion. So I'm like, what? This is all bonus stuff.
Yes.
And then, you win an Olympic medal and you're like, oh my God, that's a big bonus. And then, you move on and you're like, do an Ironman. You're like, oh my God, it's a bonus. So for me, the way I manage it, because I sort of do have a full plate, and I do like to be competitive. So I sort of keep it a little bit shorter.
Mm-hmm.
I keep the distances that I race a little bit shorter because, I do coach full time, my personal athlete clients. Then I also have the UCSD triathlon team that I coach as well. So that's mainly like a fall winter sort of obligation. And, I run sessions as well. I do a kids program during the summer. I do a couple of, like, an 8-week program to try to get some kids more engaged in the sport. And then I go ride my horse every day. So definitely, time management is important. And, I'm lucky enough that I can sort of, pick my own hours, basically. Sometimes they're driven by, other people's schedule, but, I'm lucky enough. And then, with the type of training that I'm doing, I'm training for basically a 1 hour to 2 hour race. So I can manage that by doing like 1 or 2 workouts a day, and then on the weekends doing some longer stuff. And it's exactly how you would run a regular program for everyone else, But,
Yes.
the length of how much training they're doing is determined by the length of the race. And, I always find people who are super motivated and really, really dedicated, they'll find the time to fit it in. But I think the biggest challenge you have when you have, a family and work commitments, it's like you've got to work with the time that you have, but sort of make it like a family thing. I think a lot of athletes, make the mistake of not trying to include the family. And it ain't like having your 12 or 13-year-old daughter or son coming out on the bike and supplying you hydration as you run.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or it might be, hey, turn up at the pool a little bit after you finish your session and they can swim in the pool. So it's like, it's managing everyone else is sometimes harder than managing yourself, because it is very time consuming if you're doing an Ironman. Realistically, minimum hours for an Ironman is about 10 hours, but that's going to go up at some point to about 15.
Wow.
So, that's a lot of hours in the week. But then, if you're doing short course triathlon, you can get by on like 3 to 5 hours.
Wow.
No big deal. So it's just working out, the time that you have and matching up that to your goals, to matching up to the distance that you're trying to do.
It's so interesting because we, work with a lot of equestrians, And just in the time span that we have, you know, when you think about work and family and downtime for yourself, because that's important as well for you to recharge, whatever that looks like for you, take a walk in nature or read a book, whatever it is, be creative.
For me, it's going out to the barn.
Okay, so I was going to say, and then to the barn. Now I spend that 15 hours plus, that's where I am. I'm at the barn having my fun, and that's my Zen place. So that's an added layer that you have. And I'd love to know, what this is the burning question in my mind. How do you take your mindset of winning and bring that to the horse world for yourself?
Well, you know, coming from a very individual sport like triathlon and then coming to a team sport where you've got to manage the horse and your expectations and, you know, they sense everything.
Yes.
And I had a great conversation with Conrad Schumacher a while ago about this, how he went into the Olympic program as a national coach, but then they also hired a sports psychologist, and it's like the sports psychologist didn't really get the horse thing, and, you know, he felt that he sort of made the mistake of like letting the sports psych take over what he really believed, what the horse, how the whole horse's mind works and how sensitive they are to how you feel. And in the end, he said, look, we're just going back to what we normally do. It's like, this is the warm-up we've always done. This is the warm-up we're going to stick to. And that's what I basically do before every major race and even every major horse competition that I do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, the warm-up should be the same as what you do every other time, right?
Yes.
And the reason why you do that is because it's routine and you know where you need to be and you don't have to think about anything else, right? You know how long it's going to take. You know, it's a little more flexible sometimes with a horse because if they're a little more nervous or a little more wild, you know, you have to work out, but, you know, you allow enough time. And, you know, it's tricky because then you don't want too little time, but you don't want too much time. Right. Where, you know, when you're warming yourself up, you're way more in tune with that. So you become more in tune with, you know, the animal that you're working with because they're going to throw all sorts of different things at you. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the first thing, no matter what you do, because, you know, I tell people this all the time, and it's not like I'm a professional horse rider or anything, but it's like, hey, you're dealing with a high performance machine. So treat them like a high performance machine. They should be warmed up correctly. You shouldn't cut any corners. You know, I sort of like, and that's what I like about the guy who teaches, my instructor, Matt Cunningham, who teaches me when he's giving me a lesson on dressage. He sort of knows my background and he knows that I'm like big on that high performance component of whether it's triathlon or horse riding, and he is really good at fitting that in and making it work. And he challenges me enough that it's like, you know, I can follow the program. Okay, there's a progression. Okay, this is the warm up, and then we progress and we work on a skill, and then we do our warm down. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And you know, a lot of people don't have that high performance mentality.
Well, that's the thing.
It's not hard to sort of figure out. It's just, you know, looking at it, you know, there should be a warm-up, warm-down, and there should be a skill that you're working on.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't have that mentality. A lot of people don't go in with a focus, and it's really nice to have, you know, what would be your tip, I guess, for the listeners, for the equestrians especially, that they could focus, they'd like peak performance, but they're really not sure how they can cultivate that. What would be your tip for them?
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's having a discussion with your trainer, or, you know, if you get a lesson once a week, once a month, okay, it's like just taking away, you know, what's the best warm-up for this horse? What's the best way to ask these questions? What's the best warm-down? Okay, what should we focus on until the next time we see you? And, you know, all good instructors will do that. They'll give you things to work on so that you can perfect until you see them again.
Yes. And
so
that's the fun part, right? You get to work on it. That's the fun part.
Yeah, and I think, you know, people just go into a lesson and they have no plan.
Yes.
Or they go and ride their horse and they've like well, I'm just going to go out and, so it is that extra little bit of work that sometimes takes away, people find it takes away from, the pleasure of riding. But in the long run, it's not, you're just training yourself to set yourself up for success. And that's what you've got to keep reminding people, you're training yourself to set yourself up for success.
Yes.
And, then you're limiting the risk of injury to the horse. You know where you need to be and when you need to be somewhere, based on, the progression. And also, if you do decide to compete, it's like, you don't get as nervous because you don't want the horse to sense that you're nervous because then they're going to get nervous. So it's like what you do and what you feel is like amplified so much when you ride.
Yes. Yes.
So, so I think the biggest gain to it is, know where you're going. Know what that warm-up needs to be, know what that warm-down needs to be, and know where the progression is. And, it's like, don't be afraid to, like, set a goal. You might not have to share it with the world, but, setting goals is part of the process.
Yeah, it is. And horses love a job, right? Every animal that I've ever worked with, they love a job and they want to do their part. So learning,
and let's face it,
fun.
The reward for them is like what? A piece of candy? How awesome is that?
Yes.
You reward me with a piece of candy after a race or something. Okay. Their motivation is so simplistic compared to our complex motivation as humans. So they are, and that's why they're so great to work with. And, I've had a couple of great instructors over the years and they're like, your horse is always going to tell you what discipline they want to do and you should listen to them.
Wow. That's amazing. And that's so true. I believe they're the master teachers, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you can't force a horse to do something that they really don't want to do because in the end, they won't do it. So It's important to, you might buy a horse that you want it to be a hunter jumper, but it wants to be a dressage horse. You might have a dressage horse that doesn't want to be a dressage horse. So it's part of the learning process and it's tough sometimes because, no, this is what we really want to do. And I think another key thing, in my racing and in my training and my coaching is being patient.
Yes.
A lot of the times, you see a talented athlete or you see a talented horse and it's like, hey, let's just take our time and not get greedy because, you don't want them to burn out. You don't want them to get injured. You always should think of longevity.
Yes, because I think that a lot of people, and that goes back to the expectations, right? And managing your expectations in terms of what you want to do and being realistic about it. Because I see so many times there are people that have pushed the horses too far, too fast. And if they just sat back a little bit and gave them a little bit more breathing time, it'd be okay. But, when you push them, they get frustrated and they get anxiety sometimes, and then the nerves come out, and then all kinds of issues can happen, including injuries, which nobody wants to have happen to their horse. So it is very important to
exactly, and that's why it's important to be realistic.
Yes,
and have somebody who can guide you. And I mean, the horse that I have now, she's going to be 7 at the end of June, and I had her as like she was just about to turn 5. So, and she's quite tall. So, her muscular development is very, very different from a 16-hand horse when she's like 17.3.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
we've been really, really cautious on, not pushing her too much, but just giving her enough that, you're getting the muscular development. But, in dressage, it's like you're just maintaining the basics, right? If you get the basics right and you keep reinforcing the basics,
Yes.
you're always going to have your challenges. But, if the basics are there, it does make it easier. And, it's like finding someone that's willing to stay on the path that you're willing to and being realistic. I think that's important too, because let's face it, we all get excited when we're like, oh my God, my horse just did a PR. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Counter canter. And, it's like, well, there's all these cool things that you get to do, but it's like, take a deep breath and just know that, hey, is this where we need to go to get to where we need to go?
Yes. Yes. And having that in your mind. I would love to talk to you about Katie Kelly, and if you would tell the listeners a little bit about how that even developed. because I'm so fascinated, and I just tip my hat to you. I can't even say enough great things about you. And I'm not saying that to butter you up. I'm saying that because I truly,
No.
that's
Thank
a
you.
really big, what's the word? It's a very big effort on your part and commitment. And it's lovely. And it's not seen too often.
And I look at it, it wasn't like I was giving, I felt like I was taking because it was so rewarding and so motivating to help someone else. And so the way it happened was the Australian para-triathlon coach had been contacted, Katie Kelly had contacted the Federation in Australia about wanting to do triathlon. She was no longer able to race as a regular athlete. She now needed a guide. And the Olympics were 3 years away. So it sort of she really wanted to do Ironman. That's one of the reasons why she contacted them. And they sort of talked her into doing the para-triathlon instead and trying to, and nobody really knew what sort of talent she had. They knew she was a very good runner and had some swim skills, no doubt about it. And I was sort of like second choice. I wasn't even the first choice for the guide because I lived in the US and she lived in Australia, as well as being so much taller than her. So they weren't sure I was going to be able to sit on the tandem because, you ride a tandem bicycle. So they were worried that, they couldn't get a bike that would fit both of us as well. So fortunately for me, the first pick, she was pregnant. So then they asked me and I'm like, oh my goodness, I would love to do it. And then my second thought was like, oh my goodness, I hope she's not a pain in the butt. Because, it's that realism, right? Because if you're going to be working with someone, you want to be working with someone you like.
Yes.
And that that you want to, like, if I'm out there racing, I'm going to go as hard as I physically can based on how hard they can go.
Yes.
So it's not like you're going to be out there, cruising around. Definitely you're putting a huge amount of effort. And so I was like, yeah. And then they threw us together. We'd never ridden a tandem together a couple of days before a race in Japan. And in Japan, you're not allowed to ride a tandem bike. You're not allowed to have two people on a bicycle in Japan. You can only have one person on a bike. So we didn't even get to race the race course or really practice that much. And I think it was the first time I ever thought I was going to crash. And I'm like, oh my goodness, if I crash, it's not just about me, it's about her.
Oh.
So much more pressure when you're racing for somebody else. Everything that you do has an impact on them.
Right.
So that was, to me, that was the most nerve-wracking thing. And it just worked. It was one of those partnerships that, the coach was really, really good in like asking me, not just as an athlete, but as a coach on the training perspective, because, he would have an idea and he'd throw it towards me. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? She really needs to, do this, and that. And it's not so nice when you're working with somebody who not only respects you as an athlete, but respects you as a coach as well. So I think that's one of the reasons why it worked. And I mean, it's tough when you're the athlete, like for Katie, when you have someone that, has done everything and is high profile, and then, there's a lot of pressure that I felt that she felt that came along with having me as a guide. Because, everyone else is like, oh my goodness, how lucky are you? And she's like, no, you don't understand. Michellie makes me go as hard as I can. She'll even tell you this story, how I made her puke after a race.
Oh my goodness.
But, yeah, but, for me, my role is to get the most out of the athlete, right? You're not only there, and she was also not only sight impaired, she's hearing impaired. So that's also a challenge because that means her equilibrium is off more than the other athletes as well. So, just little things that you had to work out. But I think we had like really good communication skills outside that. We really, even though we didn't spend a lot of time, basically I would come in before a race, the World Champs, the Olympics, it would be a couple of weeks before just to really fine tune it. And then, it just seemed to work. And that's how a lot of athletes, the combos work, that you don't always get to see the guide that you're going to race for every day, which I think is a good thing because, we're all humans and sometimes we're going to hate each other and sometimes we're going to love each other. And, I mean, in the end, we're here to help the athlete, reach their potential. And, if they're willing to push as hard as they can, then, you're willing to push even harder. So
Yes.
it is it's a tough relationship because, I know when, like on the bike, I know when she's not putting 100% in. So I'm sort of like her truth meter.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
was like, come on, I know you have a little bit more. I know you're backing off right now. You got to keep going. So it was a unique experience. Absolutely loved every minute. I mean, definitely there was some ups and downs because, we're humans. I'd
Right.
be lying if I said, there was no ups and downs. She'd get frustrated at me sometimes because he's like, come on. I'm like, it's okay. It's like I've been through all this. So if you're feeling nervous or you feel that, I need to do something better, that's where that teamwork happens.
Right.
You
So,
figure it out, you tell each other, and, you move on.
so for all the listeners out there, and I'm going to ask a really dumb question because I'm not deep in your world. So you ride the tandem bike together. So what about the running and the swimming? Are you doing it for her, or you're guiding her?
Oh, no. So in the swim, you're tethered together, and a tether for us was having a band around our legs.
Okay.
But, and then there's rules that they can't be a certain circumference away from you, or you can't be a certain circumference away from them. I mean, you're never allowed to touch them unless it's a dangerous situation.
Okay.
So it was a challenge for us, right? Because verbal communication is limited because she doesn't use hearing aids when she races. So it's like,
Wow.
we had to sort of figure something out. She could sort of like know if it was louder, there was something serious wrong, or we needed to go harder, or so it was, it's that communication piece that you sort of figure out. But yeah, so you tethered on the swim, you ride the tandem, and really on the tandem, you can't go really. I mean, definitely, my numbers are much better than hers in terms of power and that, but you really can't go any harder than they're capable of going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the misconception that a lot of people have. It's like, yeah, you want to have an athlete that's way better than you, because if something goes wrong as a guide, you've still got to keep going.
Yes.
If you get a cramp or, you're not feeling good on the day, you still got to perform.
Yes.
So and that's why you need somebody who's way better than you, because then if something happens, well, then, your pace can drop a little bit, but their pace maintains the same. And then on the run, you're tethered as well. And for us, that was just connecting we wear a race belt around our waist,
Mm-hmm.
and then you just clip onto the race belt. And the rule is you're never allowed to be in front of them.
Okay.
And then there are leading zones where you can actually, if you're going around a tight corner, then you're physically allowed to guide them. So, yeah,
So,
it's not, as straightforward as people might think. There definitely are some technicalities when you're racing together. And there was one time at the World Championships, we actually got protested again, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what did I do? What if I get this poor girl disqualified? So for me, I was an emotional wreck for 2 hours while they were discussing if we were going to be disqualified or we were going to maintain our first place.
why was that? Because you got
So
too far apart from each other, or?
Apparently on the swim, it was a choppy swim, and I was coming up as she was coming down. And I'm like, it's a chop.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
they felt, yes, they had video and they felt like I was propelling her forward. And I'm like, no, that's because of the chop. But, it's still, you don't know why you're getting protested against until they decide. So,
Wow.
yeah, but I was an emotional wreck. I was crying, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what if I got this poor girl disqualified? What did I do? I had no idea. I'm going through the race going, okay, was there any point that I did something that I shouldn't do?
Wow.
So, yeah, it was just one of those things. And, even at the last year's World Championship, they had one of the athletes was swimming off course, and he grabbed the tether and pulled him back. And technically, you're not allowed to do that because swimming off course, unless it's, going to hit something or blah, but you're not allowed to do that. So thank goodness they realized, well, what else was he going to do? But basically, you have to stop and let them realize that, they've got to swim back over. So,
Wow.
yeah, it does. Yeah. So it's like, oh, you're just going to guide someone? No, it's a little bit harder and more complicated than that, because, you got to make sure you know the course, you're going to swim as straight as you can, but, it's not like you can tell them there's a buoy coming up and you're going to turn.
Right.
It's like, and that's where the sort of tether comes into play a little bit. So the tether can only be a certain length as well. So, yeah. And then like when we were warming up for the Rio Olympics, there was some waves right at the shore break, and our tether kept breaking because of the force of the waves.
Oh, wow.
And you're always going to be tethered. And we're like, well, what's the rule if our tether breaks?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you'll be disqualified. We're like, yeah, but it's like you guys, it's a learning experience, right? Because it's so new. It's like, yeah, but our tether broke. It's like we didn't know what to do. So
wow.
It was one of those things where, it was lucky that it happened, like when we were warming up rather than happen in a race, because, we at least we knew that, we just had to stay together. And if we could show that the tether was well made and it just broke because of the force of the waves, we were fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge honor, I would think, to do something like that, but it's so much more on you because now you're not only doing the race for yourself, but now you've got somebody else that you're kind of, looking out for, but yet you can only go as fast as they can go. So there's a lot to it. I didn't realize that there were all these rules and regulations, but you must have felt an amazing sense of accomplishment that you did something like that with her. It's amazing.
Oh my goodness, I think I was more excited than her. When we were running like down the finishing chute in Rio, I was like, because I've done the Olympics before.
Yeah.
And so, for me, it's like, oh my goodness, now we're going to win a gold medal. It's like, I think I was way more excited because I'd been there and I know like how emotional that experience is.
Yeah.
I mean, the Olympics is it's like no other emotional experience you'll ever see. Like even in Sydney, because my family was there and my twin sister was standing in the stands as we walked onto the start line. And I looked up and I saw her crying. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, I started crying.
Uh-oh.
Such this emotional experience. I'm like, oh, my goodness, it's the biggest race I'm ever going to do in my entire life, and I'm crying. And I think, just having that experience, and I always used to tell Katie, it's like, look, if I'm not thinking it or haven't thought it or haven't been through it, it's probably never going to happen because I've been in the sport for so long. So,
right.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, it's just giving back, giving somebody else an opportunity to do something that, most people don't get to do, and that's to compete at the Olympics.
Which is amazing. Yeah. I mean, very few people get to do that. So that's amazing that you were able to do that. And you've just done so many wonderful things. What are your goals now for the next couple of years? And do you plan out that far for your goals?
Oh, yeah. Like, as a coach, I've got a couple of para-athletes that I coach. So last year I coached Sarah Reinerson, and she finished the Hawaiian Ironman, and she went faster than she did 10 years before. So that was pretty exciting.
Wow, that's cool.
To think that she was faster in her 40s than she was in her 30s.
Wow.
And then I have a bilateral marathon guy that I coach, and he just broke the world record.
Wow.
For the outright bilateral marathon record. So, it's pretty exciting when you see an athlete, do so well because, they're dedicated and putting the program. And I'm also coaching a para-triathlete that's trying to make the Tokyo team.
Wow.
Next year. So,
that's so cool.
In terms of that, I've always got, and all my other athletes that I have, they have so many great things that are coming up as well. And then for me as an individual, hopefully I get to race the World Championships this year in Switzerland as an age grouper. And then, as a horse rider, I have a bunch of goals. So trying to get my horse up to Prix St within the next 12 months. So I've never ridden Prix St George. Actually, up until this year, I'd never ridden past second level. So,
wow.
Just little things like that. There's always little things that you can achieve.
Little things like that.
And
that's huge. Just that there is focus their whole lives on just getting up to the next level in dressage. So that's amazing that you're able to do it. And I have no doubt.
Until this point, I grew up horse riding. and I gave up triathlon. I gave up horse riding to do triathlon. So then I sort of started riding. I had a couple of Morgans that I did some showing with them, Hunt, Seat and Western. And then my twin sister who rides dressage kept telling me, you need to get a dressage horse. You need to get a dressage horse. And I did some dressage with my Morgans and I absolutely loved it. And then I bought the horse that I have now. And, you know, the goal is to get up to that FEI level. And so far, so good. We're moving forward. We've been working on our tempi changes. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's so cool. That's so cool. What do you think the horses have brought to you that you've actually brought to your coaching of all your triathletes? How do you think they've helped you?
I always love it when my friends have these awesome perspectives, because I had one of my friends who knows me as a triathlete and also rides, and she goes, Michellie, I think one of the reasons why you had a good transition from being a professional athlete to a regular person, because, you know, there is a big change, is because of the horses.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had something, and, you know, I still do triathlon, but, you know, a lot of professionals struggle giving up who they are, because it is like how you're treated as a professional athlete is different to how you're treated as, you know, a regular person. And I think for me, I sort of transitioned into that horse relationship that, like, it's just humbling, and it's not just about you anymore. You know, triathlon is very much different in the individual sport, even though you have a whole team around you, coaches, therapists, you know, mechanics, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know, transitioning into a sport where, you know what, sometimes you're going to let the horse down, sometimes the horse is going to let you down, but that's okay. So I think having something else to do besides the swim, biking and running, I think for me, my friends, like, you know, often so many athletes struggle, and you seem to, like, you know, I mean, not that I don't struggle, you know, it's like, you know, sometimes it's like, but I've always been really good, okay? You know what, not if I'm not going to be as good as I used to be, I'm going to set new goals. And that's how the motivation, you know, stays. And I think and triathlon's very humbling anyway.
Yes.
But, you know, then you get into the horse world and, you know, that relationship that you build. And it is humbling as well. It's like another humbling sport, but it's definitely a lot more teamwork. And one of my friends who does para-triathlon, she actually used to do dressage, and she was very good at it. And she was at a big competition, and her horse got sick, and she didn't like the feeling of something else letting her down. She would rather have her own control of her destiny. So that's how she switched across to triathlon. The Equestrian high performance manager saw her swimming one day and said, you know what, maybe you should try triathlon.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, you know, you just never know, you know, what circumstances are going to lead you into something that maybe you never thought of. And I never thought I was going to be guiding an athlete at the Olympics and the Paralympics.
Yeah.
You know, and that's sort of how I felt like my whole career sort of been, because I swore that I would never, ever do an Ironman. I thought it was the cray-cray people.
I kind of think it's a little cray-cray. I'm just going to be totally straight up honest with you. I think it's
yeah. Hey, it is. I mean, but, you know, if you're motivated in your training and, you know, there's a progression, blah, 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 you know, it's achievable.
Yes.
You know, if you're willing to put the work in and blah, 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 and, you know, you have a coachable athlete that you're working with, because that's so important.
Yes.
But yeah, I still think it's crazy. It's like I get asked every year, hey, Michellie, you want to come back and do Kona? I'm like, no, that means I couldn't ride my horse as much.
I mean, I think that the horses give me a perspective, and they give me the humility involved with horses is so huge. You have to put your ego to the side, because there's no other way to work. It is definitely a 50-50 sport. And yes, you can let them down, they can let you down, but at the same time, the heights are amazing. When you think something and they do it, it's just that feeling of, wow, this is so great. We're in sync together. You know, it's
no, exactly.
Feeling, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Like today we were, you know, working on our tempi changes, and it's like, yay, starting to get them. Now I have to learn to count.
Yay, it's happening. It's happening. What are your,
Yeah, and then there's some days where it's like, all right, I should give up.
yeah.
What am I doing? But, you know, that's the same in any sport, right? Like, even, like, you know, you have the good days and the bad days. And it's like, if you had good days all the time, you wouldn't appreciate. I mean, you wouldn't just appreciate it. So you've got to have those bad days to really appreciate it. As much as they are frustrating, you know, as a professional athlete and even a regular athlete, you know, getting sick or injured, it's like, oh my goodness, I don't want any of that to happen. But, you know, it teaches you a lot about yourself. And it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, if you win all the time, you never learn anything. But if you actually have to struggle and, you know, fought with disappointment and, you know, something happens and it's like it didn't go according to plan, you know, you can sort of figure it out. But if you're winning all the time, what's there to figure out?
Yeah, that's true. I never thought of it that way. And also the horses teach us so many things and, you know, with their humility and the way they are. And sometimes they have good days and you don't, and vice versa. And I have had many days where I'll go in and, you know, you get all ready to go. And then all of a sudden you realize something's off and it could be physical, and they have just down days like we do, right? They have days where they're not on fire, and
Well, they're athletes too, right?
forget it. You know, let's just do a little something fun today, you know, no pressure.
Yeah. And I mean, that's one of the things that we do on a regular basis is we trail ride.
Yes.
Like, yeah, my horse gets trail ride at least once or twice a week.
And that's for the mind, right? That's wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. And it's good for my mind.
Yes, yes. Because I
As
mean,
much
we're
as it is
all
for
like
hers.
living beings. We can't all just be like serious all the time. I mean, you got to have some fun and lighten up a little bit and go out and look at trees and have a good time, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, that's one thing that I really like about my trainer, Matt Cunningham, is we've worked out the plan. We know where we're headed. And if we do something well, we're done. It's
Yes.
not like we're going to keep trying and trying. It's like, and it's great because sometimes the lesson's only like 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes they're a little longer, but it's like, you know, willing to go, you know what, we don't need to do one more.
Yes.
You know, and you know, I see that a lot in triathlon. In like before a major race, I'll see these athletes going out and they've totally like screwed themselves because they've just gone too hard for training, and then they've got nothing left for the race. And, you know, I see the same thing at competitions where you'll see people warming their horse up. I'm going, are you warming your horse up or are you warming yourself up?
Yes.
Because maybe you should like have a little plan of how you need to warm up a little bit that's not with the horse, whether that's some mental preparation, whether that's some functional stuff that you need to work on. I know it's getting bigger and bigger in the equestrian world that, you know, that you have some people out there that are looking at how you sit on a horse and then giving you some functional exercises to fix that. And I think that's brilliant.
And I help with the mindset of that. The mindset's huge, right? I mean, you've got to be in your flow state and be calm, but not aggressive, and be ready and expectant. And it's just, you're in that state where you're ready, but you're not aggressive. But that's a mind thing too, mindset as well as body. It's putting yourself in that mind, body, spirit alignment, I guess I would call it.
And definitely that's one thing that I struggle with when I ride my horse, because I'm so used to like turning the muscle on, right? And when I get on the horse, I've got to turn the muscle off, if that makes sense.
Yep, that makes sense.
Especially in dressage, it's like, you know, you've got to be so relaxed in the lower leg. And I'm so used to like, hey, if I want more power, I want to go faster, it's like, I got to power up. I got to turn the muscle on. And then in dressage, I'm like, got to turn the muscle off.
Yes.
And the way that I sit is very different when I'm sitting on my bike compared to when you're sitting on your horse. The way that your pelvic tilt is so different. And it's like, I'm so ingrained in swim, biking and running. And I think that's my frustration that I have, because I understand it, but then it takes like 1,000 times to do it correctly before you can change anything. So it can be, you know, I think when you sort of like have a good instinct on what you're trying to achieve, but you can't quite achieve it. I mean, it's frustrating for everyone.
Yes.
But it's sometimes, you know, people they can't connect. It takes them a lot longer to connect the dots.
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
that's, yeah. And I've had my own frustrations, myself, even though I'm not competitive, doing running or anything like that, but just, it's definitely frustrating when you want to go somewhere and you know where you want to go and you have a plan, but yet things aren't really clicking and you're trying to get in alignment. But then, it's
I,
sometimes
I
there's
call that
fear.
character building.
You to call it what?
Character building.
Character building. There you go. There you go.
Yeah, because you got to go back, you've really got to okay, is this really what I want to do? How
Yes.
do I change this? There's a thought process to and if you don't have that thought process, you can't move forward.
Right.
It's sort of, sometimes, dressage to me is like learning mathematics, like as a kid, right? If you don't get the concepts, you can't move forward, right?
Yes.
So dressage is sort of the same, because if you don't get the fundamentals, you're never going to be able to do this, this, or this.
Right.
And it's like, mathematics is just the same for a little kid trying to learn math. It's like, if they don't understand this one concept, they're never going to, doesn't matter how much you explain it or blah, 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 they'll never get it.
Right. Because it all builds on the framework that you've created. Right.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I'd love to know, and I know we're getting almost out of time, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are on aging. And women now, especially, are coming back into this midlife, 40s, 50s. Like, this is a second act for a lot of us. We're actually blooming and blossoming versus shutting down as they did, 30 years ago, which is amazing. I love it. What are your thoughts in terms of, women especially getting a little bit older and still having goals and trying to achieve what they want to?
Well, I'm going to be 50 in a couple of months, so I'm totally there.
Sweet.
So, it's like, for me, it's like I see some of my older friends and I'm like, oh, thank goodness they're doing all this fun stuff.
Yeah.
For one,
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, if they can keep doing it, I can do it. So having good role models, doesn't matter where you are in your life, is so important.
Yes.
But it's like, yeah, we have a greater understanding of how the body works, and because there's role models out there, it's like anything. It's like when they were trying to achieve the 4-minute mile for running. Nobody could achieve it until one person did, and then everyone could.
Yes.
So
Yep.
if you don't see, I have a couple of awesome friends that are like in their 70s who still ride at the FEI level, and I'm like, that is so awesome.
That's amazing. That's awesome. I love that.
And I think that's one thing that I like about horse riding, because definitely there's a little longevity than triathlon. Although triathlon, there are people who are well in their 80s that still do it.
I know.
I mean, if you look at Sister Madonna, if anybody should Google her, she's done the Ironman so many times, and she's a great lady. I've met her a couple of times, and she's a lot of fun. And yeah, that's what it is. It's like, it's like age is just a number.
Yes.
And yeah, some days I'm going to feel a little older, some days I'm going to feel a little younger. But it's like, I always have had this belief, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Me too.
So it's like, you just, some days are going to be tougher than others. And, as we get older, we deal with, different medical issues, and it's like ways to navigate around them. And, sometimes something's taken away, but maybe that's opening a door to something else. That's Absolutely. The way I've sort of viewed stuff. So in terms of aging, it's like, you've just got to keep passionate about something. I think that's the most important thing. It's like, find what drives you, find what you're passionate about. And, it's not always easy. There's always bumps and hills and mountains in the way, but that's part of life, is, living life to the fullest and trying to do what you can do with the time that you're given.
Yes. And I think that, what you said is so important. I have seen people in their 70s and 80s doing the triathletes. So it's possible. And I think being passionate about something is really, really important. I think also being open and curious. I feel the same way you do that. It's just, you have to keep learning, right? You have to be curious, because otherwise I feel like you're stagnant, and then you're either learning or you're not. You're either moving forward or you're not. So by riding, it keeps you interested, and it's open, and you're always learning something new, right?
And, as you get older, the one thing you don't want to do is hate changing it up, right? It's like we
Yes.
get set in our ways and we're like, oh, yeah, this is good. But sometimes, putting yourself out there is important as well.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially as we get a little bit older because, we do like, no, I'm going to try that, blah, blah, blah. It's like, but it's like if you are willing to at least try something, it's like, what have you got to lose?
Right. Right. And I think just having that passion and being open to it is huge. And the wonderful thing about riding is that people are doing it. There's really no age where you have to stop. I mean, you can always have a younger horse, and actually, it goes in your favor because the more experience you have, the better off you are. So, just as in your sport as well. So, well, I can't
No,
thank you enough
exactly.
for
I
being
mean,
here. This has
yeah.
been awesome. I am so thrilled to have spoken with you today, and I can't thank you enough for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Where can people find you online, Michellie?
Okay, so I have a website. Of course, it's horse name, giddyupmultisport.com.
Love it. Love it.
And Facebook. Yeah, you can find me on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram by my first and last name. So yeah, and if anyone's ever got any question they want to ask, I'm more than happy to. If I have an answer, I will let you know, and if I don't, I'll try to research it for you. But I think the bottom line is, life is too short not to enjoy it, and never be afraid to try something that you maybe thought was impossible. I mean, otherwise, I never would have been an Olympic medalist or done the Ironman or been given the opportunity to guide a sight impaired athlete.
It's amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. We are going to have all the links listed below so that you can find Michellie online and on her social media as well. And I encourage you to check her out because she's got some amazing, she's done so much and she's got so much more to do. So definitely keep an eye out for her. But thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I'm so thrilled to talk with you, and you've really inspired me to get going on my physical fitness.
I love it. Because, if without physical fitness, you'll never be able to ride to the best of your ability.
Yeah, you're right about that. And that's really, really important. And not a lot of people talk about that. That's super important. I mean, if we expect them to be an athlete, then we should at least give them the same courtesy, and we need to be in shape as well for the best ride that we can have.
Exactly. I love it.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Michellie. Love talking with you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.